All right, I think we're on here. Let me see. All right, how's it going, everybody? Nice to see we have a couple guys on the line already. Jeff Wilson and John Hopkins here very, very early. So if you guys are joining us here, Jeff Wilson, always one of the first to comment. Nice to see you. Same with you, John. And DM, super happy to see you. Always enjoy discussing with you, both here in the chat and through the emails as well. And super unfortunate to see that NASA and SpaceX flight was canceled. I was watching that right up until I started getting ready for this live stream. I was really looking forward to seeing it. Pretty historic moment it was going to be. But guess we got to wait till Saturday now. So as you say, on to college football with the gridiron expert, Cyclone Mitch. Good to see you. And notice I am wearing the suit and tie today. I got a little ridiculed for that last week, just wearing the plain button down. So made sure to dress appropriately today. Ethan the Buckeye, good to see you, taking care of some bots on our normal videos. And Brandon Franklin. Hey, perfect. Listen, this is right here probably better than what you're going to hear on the radio driving home from work. So drive safe and just enjoy the content. If you feel obliged, give us a call. We want to hear from you. So as many of you know, we are joining this live stream a little bit earlier than usual. Usually it's going to be at 8 o'clock Central Time every Wednesday night. Today we made a slight exception. I'm happy to see we got about 9 people on right now. Had to make an exception, have some dinner plans later, so we're only going to be going on for about an hour or so today, because then I got to get ready and head off to go to that. But I wanted to make sure we got on here for a live stream, and it wasn't too late for some of you guys, especially on the East Coast. So we're going to open the lines here in a minute to take as many calls and comments as possible, and certainly are going to be hitting the live chat as much as possible too, answering your questions and comments from there. So we're about to throw the number right out there in the live chat. But once again, thank you all for joining us. And I hope you all had a great Memorial Day weekend as well, as best as you can at least. I was lucky enough to be able to get away for a few days. Was able to go up to the lake for a little bit. Got to see some family members and just kind of enjoy some time away from the city and away from all the hecticness that's going on here. But of course, maintaining our social distancing and trying to be as safe as possible. So I hope you all had a great long weekend and are ready to get back to it. May's about to end. June begins next week. You all know what happens in June. Predictions start. It's not going to start on June 1st, but it's going to start very, very soon after that. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for some news coming on that very, very soon. So without further ado, like I said, since it's going to be a shorter live stream, we'll kind of dismiss the pleasantries and dismiss some of the introductions and some of the topics that I had laid out, and we're just going to jump right to it. So I'm going to enter the number right here in the chat. And that is 901-297-4545. Ready to hear from you guys. Anything you guys want to talk about, any questions, comments, concerns, likes, dislikes, we want to hear from you. We want to hear what's going on. Of course, as COVID continues to rage, a lot of schools right now are really trying to figure out what they're going to do with attendance. Because I'll tell you one thing, guys. I'll tell you one thing for sure. I feel very, very confident, and tell me if you agree or disagree here in the chat. I feel very, very confident that we're going to have a college football season here in about 3 months. Probably about 3 months from now. Week 0 begins, I believe, on August 29th. And the big one's going to be Notre Dame and Navy in Ireland. That game might not happen, depending on travel restrictions, but we're going to have a season. Plain and simple. Too many conferences, too many schools are allowing their players to return to campus. They're allowing voluntary workouts. The Big 12, Oklahoma in particular, is being very stingy on that. I don't think Oklahoma's starting until July, while many schools are starting either here on June 1st or June 8th. But fact of the matter is, we wouldn't be doing that. Schools wouldn't be going back. Athletes wouldn't be going back. Voluntary workouts wouldn't be available if we weren't getting prepped for a season. And I do believe it's going to happen. Whether there are fans in the stands or not, whether we have a shortened season, I don't know. But I think any football is better than no football, if you're asking me. So, as Cyclone Mitch would point out, certainly something that I was going to discuss here. Iowa State is only allowing 30,000 people for the season as of the rules right now in the state. So over at the Jack Trice Stadium, 30,000 people are going to be allowed. I think that's a little premature to make that decision now. And right, you said, as of now, rules being in the state, you can't make any exceptions. Whatever the government and whatever the higher-ups say, you have to abide by. But we are still in May. But I will say this. That's about 50% capacity for Iowa State. I think that's better than what Ohio State was going to try to do, and that was going to be like 20 to 35,000. And being in the horseshoe, that it really isn't that many people. So I think having 50% capacity for the Cyclones is pretty dang good. I think they should wait to make the decision a little while later, just like I think every school should wait until closer to time to announce whether or not they're going to do full capacity or 50% or whatever, because then you got to figure out how do you decide who gets in. And as Mitch just said, he's glad he renewed his ticket. So your season ticket holders have to get first priority. They get their choice. If you're going to pay that much for season tickets, then you definitely get to go in compared to a guy that just bought season game or single game tickets. So that's going to make a huge kind of problem within the athletic offices and trying to figure out how we're going to get fans into these stadiums. But moral of the story is we're going to have a season one way or another. Any fans are better than no fans. Any football is better than no football. So I'll happily take whatever we can get. And we're getting our first call right now from Savannah, Georgia. And, of course, we'll jump right back to the live chat here in a second because it was blowing up. Get him on speaker here. All right, you are on the Gridiron Expert. Who do we have with us?
Hey, this is Ryan Mill.
Hey, what's up, Ryan? How you doing?
I'm doing fine. I know you said it was a short live stream, so I just want to get this one question out real fast because I actually can't stay all stream.
Hey, no, absolutely.
I've heard a lot of people, and you've talked about it too on some of your things about some people really hyping up Florida this year. As you know, I'm a Georgia Bulldogs fan. And I'm not saying people are wrong because I also think Florida's going to be a pretty good team. But I see a lot of people saying that Florida's going to break the streak and like kind of score more on Georgia. But I think that's kind of saying, do you think Georgia's defense? That's kind of the question. Do you think Georgia's defense is going to be good enough to hold off Florida this year, or do you think Florida's going to be able to score more points this year? Because I've heard a lot of people saying the Florida offense is going to be elite enough that they're going to score on any point.
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's one of the biggest storylines, Ryan, going into this season is the SEC East race because one of those teams is going to win that division. It's going to be Georgia, Florida, and it's going to probably be decided down in Jacksonville. And you'll probably be pleased to hear what I'm about to say is until – now I know it could happen this year, but until Florida gets over that hump, I think the East is Georgia's to lose. I think there's the hype surrounding Florida and what they're talking about this year, some people ranking them higher than the Bulldogs, some people picking them to win the East. It's justified because Mullen probably has his best team yet there. I think Trask is played very well last year, better than Felipe Franks. Solid running game, solid receivers. Kyle Pitts, one of the best tight ends, and their defense, of course, is up there with Georgia as one of the best in the SEC. But last year I thought could have been the year that Georgia lost to Florida. I viewed that game as okay. Well, maybe even though I picked Georgia to win, I thought okay, this is a chance that Florida could take it over, and they looked horrible. They looked absolutely horrible, and the reason they did was because of how well Georgia's defense played. So right now, Ryan, until I make official predictions, which will come out here pretty soon, I'm sticking with Georgia. I think it's their division to lose and their game to lose until Florida can prove otherwise. And honestly, if Florida wants to get over that hump and wants to defeat Georgia and win the East, it has to be this year because I think after this year they might take a minor step back while Georgia probably won't.
Yeah. Well, thanks for answering my question. I'd like to say for the rest of the live stream that I got some family stuff I got to do, so I'm going to hop off real quick. Thanks for answering my question, though.
Hey, absolutely, man. Glad you're able to join us for a little bit, and just take care.
All right, bye.
All right, bye, Ryan. So some great discussion there with Ryan Mell, big Georgia Bulldogs fan. Of course, the major question this year is, will Georgia win the SEC East again, or is this the year that Dan Mullen and Florida can finally get over that hump and win the East, beat Georgia, win the East, maybe get into the college football playoff? Who knows? But once again, if there's any year for the Gators to do it, it is this year. So, but once again, we talked about it last week with Sam, Mr. All College Football. We've talked about it a couple other times that I really think that until Florida does it, which could be this year, who knows, but until Florida shows me something, it's Georgia's to lose. Because the past few years, last year, the year before, they had their opportunities to get past Georgia. They had solid teams with Dan Mullen and fell short both times. Last year's game was more competitive than the one in 2018, but still, certainly something to keep our eye on going into this season. So definitely going to hit some more of the live chat here. Once again, the call-in number towards the top of the chat, 901-297-4545, and we'll throw that number back out there here in a few minutes. But once again, thank you, Ryan, for calling in. Jeff Wilson, is it possible that LSU will beat Alabama? Well, absolutely. Absolutely, it's possible. Because while many think that LSU is just going to fall off and be mediocre again, I beg to differ. I strongly beg to differ. That's not going to be the case. You look at this, the fact that Alabama has to travel to Death Valley, that gives LSU a huge boost already, assuming they do have fans there. I think one thing we have to keep in mind is that as the season goes on, if it becomes more evident that we're not going to have fans, then home field advantage might not really be a thing. There might not be such a thing as home field advantage, because playing in front of an empty or relatively empty Tiger Stadium down in Death Valley, or relatively empty Happy Valley for a whiteout game, it's not the same environment. It doesn't give you that same edge as it would if that stadium was sold out. But Jeff, it is extremely possible. Biggest thing for LSU and for Alabama both is going to be quarterback play. I liked Mac Jones. I liked what I saw from him in this little bit that we saw at Alabama this past year when Tua went down, of course. $1 million question is, how well does Miles Brennan play for LSU? And you'll know that, of course, by November when those two teams meet. But the talent surrounding LSU, especially at wide receiver with Jamar Chase coming back, shows to me that if Brennan can just be half, maybe 60% what Joe Burrow was, the Tigers aren't going to drop off. They can still win the SEC West. And that game in Death Valley will probably decide who wins that Western Division. Auburn could be that dark horse, maybe A&M, but once again, like we were saying with Florida, Georgia, until someone can prove us otherwise, it's LSU or Alabama's division to lose. Cyclone Mitch, for your sake, I'm very glad you renewed your tickets, and I'm certainly hoping that the students are allowed into Jack Trice Stadium as well. That's another thing you have to think about. If you're going to cut down on capacity, if you're going to cut down on who's allowed into these games, 50%, season ticket holders, your big money guys, they get first pick. You're going to give them the edge. Students aren't paying that big money. They're paying their tuition, of course. That's enough in my opinion. But big money, big donors, they go first. Then how you decide which students get in, especially at big schools, Power 5 schools that have very loyal fan bases. It's going to be a very tough decision. So I hope they get to do that, but it remains to be seen. It really does. DM, I didn't mean to overlook yours. Greg Schiano from Rutgers has transfers from Michigan, Baylor, Nebraska, UCF, Minnesota, etc., which is very, very interesting. And DM, you and I just discussed how well Greg Schiano is recruiting at Rutgers. 2021 class, I think he already has 19 commits, 10 of which have come outside the state of New Jersey. So he's doing very, very good in terms of expanding outside that Northeast region where Rutgers is located. So I think he's doing a fantastic job. You might not see the change in Rutgers. You might not see this team that's going to go bowling in 2020, but you will see a more competitive Rutgers team because Schiano is doing a great job utilizing the transfer portal. Keep in mind, I believe he got a couple from Wisconsin as well. Great job utilizing the transfer portal, and he's a guy that, just, to me, I'd run through a brick wall for. Very passionate coach, very fiery coach. And so while Rutgers might not get the wins, they're going to be more competitive to the point where if you cakewalk and you sleepwalk through their game, they might pull an upset. Because Gone is the day where you can just write down an automatic win on your schedule when you see Rutgers. I think those days are over, at least as long as Greg Schiano is there. Legalize Quack. It has certainly been a while, my man. I hope you're doing well, because it has been a little while since we've talked and I've heard from you. But as you said, reiterating what we were talking about, half capacity is better than no capacity, 100%. 100%. And I think you can certainly attest to that for that Week 2 game versus Ohio State. I want fans there for Oregon. I want there to be fans at Autzen Stadium for that game against Ohio State. I want fans there in Death Valley for LSU, Alabama, for Penn State, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Clemson. The biggest games of the year, they're not going to be the same. They're not going to be as exciting if you don't have fans. And any fans are better than none. And half is certainly better than 25%. Because some stadiums and some programs were going less than 50%. But I'd happily take 50%. Some of these schools don't even fill up their stadiums 50% anyway. So definitely would be better than no capacity. So another great question from Jeff Wilson. And I'm once again kind of throw the call-in number down there at the bottom just for anyone that wants to call in. Once again, we're going to try to get through as many questions and comments and calls as possible in this about hour show, give or take. Jeff Wilson, will this be Trevor Lawrence's last year, and will he be a Heisman contender? Yes and yes. Heisman contender without a doubt, as long as he doesn't have a bad start to the season like he did last year. And this is absolutely going to be his last year at Clemson. He more than likely will be the number 1 overall pick in next year's NFL draft. Of course, I think that depends on who has the number 1 pick. Do they need a quarterback? But he's too good to not be taken at number 1. And he would be crazy to not go to the NFL after this year, assuming all goes well. Assuming he doesn't get hurt, assuming he doesn't have a bad year. If everything lines up well for Trevor Lawrence, he is leaving Clemson after 2020. And he certainly will be a Heisman Trophy contender as well, alongside some of the better quarterbacks in the country, namely Justin Fields. He might be able to snag a Heisman this year over at Ohio State. And boy, wouldn't we love to see a rematch between Clemson and Ohio State. The best games we saw in all of 2019 last year, that college football playoff matchup out in the desert in the Fiesta Bowl, and would certainly love to see a rematch again, maybe even in a national championship. Scott Van Kale, nice to see you. As he is saying, make sure to hit that like button. Every single like is huge for us, guys. Once again, it's hard to believe, I know, but that little thumbs up button right there, you click it, and it helps us out more than you know. Really, really does. So make sure to hit that like button. Scott, thank you for that reminder. And he was playing some NCAA football 13. Had a bad game as quarterback, but ended up defeating Pittsburgh 38-31. So an absolute thriller coming back down from 14. Scott, I still play my PlayStation 3 as well, playing some NCAA 14. But I like to do the dynasty mode. I like to bounce around from school to school, spend a couple of years there, win a natty, and then try to go to someone else that's a little underprivileged, has struggled for a very, very long time, and kind of build their program up and try to get them some conference championships and some national titles too. So even though that game is now 7 years old, came out in 2013, your game is 8 years old, coming out in 2012, it still gives me that little bit of college football feel that I need, especially during the offseason. Adam Berry, nice to see you. Adam, I will tell you this, buddy. I really, really like all the comments you're putting on these schedule previews. The 3 most difficult games, the 3 easiest games, and then your best case scenario and your worst case scenario. I love seeing that and just kind of getting your take on those. Some of those games too that you have suggested that are their hardest or their easiest have kind of caught me off guard. So it's just kind of interesting to see the difference of opinions there. But Adam, I really appreciate that and some good content. Definitely some very solid discussion points. So nice to have you on here. Jeff Wilson, what will Penn State be ranked to start the season? I believe I have them. In my way early top 25. I believe I have them at number 7. I believe it's number 7. Top 10 team, without a doubt. Lowest would be 10th, obviously. But I'm thinking probably around 7th or 8th for Penn State. Anything less than that for me would just be shocking. So I think that's definitely where they're going to have them going into this 2020 season. Justin Ortner. Yes, sir. Gridiron expert. If Oklahoma doesn't make the Big 12 championship, who would be the replacement? So if Oklahoma does not get in, that means 2 spots are open. Justin, that means because everybody's going to pick Oklahoma this year, I'm sure. I think if Chuba Hubbard remains at Oklahoma State, because he put out some very cryptic tweets out there talking about big news coming in a few weeks. You don't want to miss it. Don't know what that means. If he's going to go to the supplemental draft, don't think he's going to transfer. But as long as Chuba Hubbard stays there, I think Oklahoma State gets into the Big 12 championship. And then I think you've got probably a 2-way tie, kind of a toss-up between Texas and Iowa State. Those would be those are my top 4 teams, in no order in particular, going into the Big 12 in 2020. The Oklahoma State, Texas, and Iowa State. I think that's kind of going to be your top 4 teams there. Keep in mind the Big 12 is only 10 teams. And, we almost listed half of them. It's kind of an upper half and a lower half. And don't sleep on TCU either. Don't sleep on TCU. Got some big-time transfers. Got Zach Evans coming in as running back, assuming he will play a decent amount his freshman year. And Gary Patterson, once again, leading the charge for the Horned Frogs. So wouldn't sleep on them. But I'd say Oklahoma State's almost a lock for me if Oklahoma doesn't get in. Could almost be a lock for me even if Oklahoma does get in. Could see 2 matches of bedlam in 2020. But Big 12 is going to be one of the most intriguing conferences to watch this year. It really is. Because some people think Oklahoma is going to take a step back. Some people think that this is the year that someone dethrones Oklahoma. $1 million question is, if Oklahoma takes a step back, but still gets into the Big 12 championship and wins it, or maybe they don't win it, does a Big 12 team get into the college football playoff? Past few years, it's been Oklahoma. But is this the year that maybe Oklahoma State slips in there if they have a great season? Texas, maybe. Iowa State could. I mean, look, if the chips – look, Iowa State wins all those close games last year, they're playoff contenders going into the Big 12 championship. So don't sleep on anybody. Guarantee you no one thought Baylor was going to be a playoff contender last year. A couple plays away from being in the playoff. Big 12 is wide open, in my opinion, within reason, within that 5-6 teams. Kansas probably not going to go win the Big 12, but I think you catch my drift here when I'm talking about with the Big 12. One of my favorite conferences to watch in 2020, because to me it relatively is that wide open. Adam Berry, who is the best team to not make the college football playoff yet? That's a great question, and we've seen a lot of teams, Adam, that have kind of gotten snubbed from the college football playoff. If you're talking historically, I go back to, I think it was 2014, TCU was so good. And that 2014-15 Baylor team, I believe it was 2014, was really, really good too. And that was kind of the year that the Big 12 kind of got snubbed because they didn't have a conference championship game, and they were crediting strength of schedule as kind of the reason that they wouldn't get in. So I look at that. I think that was a really good team that didn't get into the playoff, both of those. I look back in 2016, I believe, Penn State. Tell you what, if Penn State doesn't lose to Pittsburgh in like week 2 of that season, losing 42-39, they don't lose that game, then Trace McSorley and Saquon Barkley, they're headed to the college football playoff because they ended up winning the Big Ten championship over Wisconsin and going to the Rose Bowl where they fell to USC. But Penn State would have gotten into the college football playoff had they just not lost to Pittsburgh. And that was before Penn State really went on their tear. That's before they beat Ohio State. That's before they kind of just ran the table. I think their only losses that year before the Rose Bowl were to Michigan and to Pittsburgh. And Michigan was a very good team that year. So they don't lose to Pittsburgh, then the Lions are in. So those 3 teams, Adam, that I think were very, very good teams that just missed out on making the college football playoff. Of course, there are a couple others. I'm sure people would throw arguments out there. But we really haven't had that much drama. Outside of those first few years of the playoff, we haven't had that much drama when it comes to who was selected and getting in to that Final Four. 2014 was pretty interesting. 2016 was pretty interesting. But usually, after Conference Championship Saturday, when you go to bed that night, you usually have a pretty good idea of who the top 4 teams are going to be. Those would be my couple that I thought were really good. John Hopkins, good to see you. That personalized Kentucky intro. CATS. Cats, cats, cats. John, super good to see you. Glad you're able to join us here for a little bit. Big thoughts on Kentucky. Big expectations for Kentucky going into 2020. And Justin Ortner, I think I kind of hit your question here a second ago. Kind of contenders in the Big 12. I was mentioning Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Texas. Those are my top 4, with TCU as maybe your dark horse to really go challenge for that. And once again, guys, call-in number is 901-297-4545. It's in the chat a few times as we are blowing up in the chat, and I love it. Slowly making my way down here. I'm going to kind of fast forward a little bit. Uncle Luke, good to see you. Hope you enjoyed the North Carolina schedule preview, and I hope all is going well. 100 days away from Tar Heel football, so there you go. There you go. About the 100-day mark before we get some legit college football, guys. And once again, it is going to happen. So that's a very interesting topic here from Cole Converse. I hear Kansas and Iowa State will be poached from the Big 12 by the Big 10 in 2023. My thoughts on a 4 super conference power system down the road. I've said before that I love discussing, conference realignments and conference discussions and, maybe what if this team went here? What if this team went there? What if we had the whole United States kind of chopped up into 4 different segments and had super conferences and got away with the group of 5? I love discussing that. I never thought or believed that we'll see the day when that happens. If you want to go with a 4 super conference power system, I'd be very interested to see how those conferences choose to do that, because you would be expanding. You pull Iowa State and Kansas and send them over to the Big 10. Big 12 is gone, which means the remaining 8 teams have to go somewhere. And we're getting a call from North Carolina right now. I do want to take this call, and then we'll get back to the live chat. All right, you are on the Gridiron Expert. Who do we have with us?
Ben.
Hey, how's it going, bud?
It's going good. Instead of talking NC State today, I wanted to take it down a notch and talk some FBS football, and just like get your thoughts on Mike Benner. Campbell, after finishing 3rd last year, had a chance for the championship, but could not get past the powerhouse of Kennesaw State.
Yeah, I saw your comment a while ago. I'm blanking on the name now, but he was, I believe, the head coach at Campbell right now, and you thought that maybe someone could pick him up as a defensive coordinator somewhere. And I went and I did a little research on Campbell, and he's done relatively well there. I think Campbell's gone 6-5 the past 2 or 3 years. So winning records, which is great, but no playoff runs, which once again, I love the FCS playoff. I love the way that's structured. I think that's how the FBS should do it. But look, I think when you look at the FCS, Ben, when you look at kind of how it's structured, we talk so much about the FBS kind of having elite powers and they're hard to get by, like your Alabamas and your Clemsons and your Ohio States and stuff like that. It's kind of the same in the FCS, if you would agree with that, because you've got your North Dakota States, you've got your James Madisons, Kennesaw State, even as you mentioned, is extremely, extremely good, and it's a team that not many Power 5 schools schedule Kennesaw State, but some Group of 5 schools do, and they lose to them. Because they're very, very good. And I look at that. Look at Eastern Washington, who's played extremely well. UCA, Central Arkansas, who's one of the top 25 FCS programs out there. Campbell doesn't have the, I don't want to go as far as say talent, but I don't think they have the resources compared to some of these other schools where they're up to that level to compete and maybe make a deep playoff run.
I agree.
And I think maybe they go take a defensive coordinator job at some point. Maybe he's able to get by there. I think it really will be dependent on this year. Biggest thing is he's got to get him to the playoffs. He's got to get him there. And once you get to the FCS playoffs, anything's possible. To me, it's very similar to March Madness. You get this little Cinderella team in there, and you've got your opportunities to go on a little run. I think it's 24 teams, and they've got a great opportunity to make a run to the title game compared to the college football playoff, where it's your just elite 4 teams. And you're 1 win away from that. So I love that structure. And if Campbell can get there this year, not only will I be watching because of these conversations and because of you bringing it to my attention, but also the possibility that they could maybe potentially make a run in there. So yeah, great question, Ben. I appreciate you calling in. I'm sure DM is very, very happy about this because we talk FCS football all the time. And certainly a level of college football that doesn't get enough respect and enough attention.
It doesn't.
All right, cool, Ben. Well, hey, I appreciate you calling in, man, and we'll try to catch you next week.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you got it. So, Ben, big NC State fan, as we know. But, like he said, trying to take it down a notch and talking some FCS football, which, once again, DM and I love talking FCS football, especially North Dakota State, the Bison with a Z, not an S. But today, talking a little bit of Campbell football and, the potential of them maybe slipping into the playoff this year. They would probably have a very low seed, which would mean they would end up setting themselves up with a date with one of the elite powers, like in North Dakota State, a James Madison, a UCA, Eastern Washington, someone like that. But great discussion over some really, really good football, guys. I think people overlook the FCS, but there's some good football there. And as we've mentioned, 2 big dogs, North Dakota State and James Madison, have big games against Oregon and North Carolina. And one of those, if not both, could result in an upset. Very, very, very possible. So scrolling through the rest of this chat here. Once again, I'm going to throw the call-in number here a little bit, but want to make sure I'm not missing too much here. And Benjamin Norman just now saying his comment. I'm early on him, but he made it. Once again, I know the times are a little bit different, guys. Today we hit 4 o'clock p.m. Central Time. We have some dinner plans coming up here in not too long, about 30 minutes, so we're going to kind of cut it short around 5 o'clock. But every other Wednesday, unless noted otherwise, 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time right here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. And, of course, we'll be posting updates for those. And if there are ever any changes on normal posts on YouTube, kind of like the written post, and then, of course, on Twitter as well, at Gridiron Expert. So if you don't follow us on either, make sure to drop us a follow so you can get all those updates and you don't miss out on these call-in shows. I love what Cyclone Mitch is saying there. TCU would have slapped Florida State in 2014, and I fully agree. That TCU team was on a whole other level, and I believe 2014 was the year that TCU lost to Baylor, so like 61-58 or something like that. They were up by 21 in the fourth quarter and blew it. TCU beats Baylor in that game. TCU's probably in the college football playoff, more than likely. So, I agree, though, that Florida State team was good, but they were cocky, they were arrogant, and Oregon just really gave them the beating they deserved. Getting a call from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Let's take a look, see who it is. All right, you were on the Gridiron Expert. Who do we have with us?
My name is Chance, and I wanted to talk about the upcoming college football season and all that. I actually think this season might even be crazier than the 2007 season.
Oh, really?
So, I actually don't think Alabama will win the SEC this year.
So Chance, I'm guessing are you a new caller by chance?
No, I've called in here before.
Yeah, okay. I guess it's been a while, so I want to get your take here. You don't think Alabama wins the SEC West? So I want to hear who you do believe wins the West, and then you think it could be crazier than the 2007 season, which was one of the best college football seasons ever. And I want to hear why you believe this year could be better than that.
Well, I actually don't know. Well, I think Bama will probably win the West, but I think Florida's going to win the whole SEC. You see what I'm saying? I think Florida is going to win it.
All right.
I
So,
really believe it.
so you believe – we talked about it at the beginning of the stream. So you've got Florida upending Georgia to win the East, and then you've actually got the Gators winning the entire SEC. All right. All right. Which would mean the Gators would get in the playoff more than likely.
Right. Yeah, I think Florida's probably around 11-1.
Okay.
That'll be pretty good this year.
I agree. I think
Alabama probably going 10-2. I probably see them probably losing to Auburn. I see them maybe. I don't know. I think they're gonna have 2 losses this year, and I do believe there is gonna be a lot of upsets. Like I can definitely see an upset in that Oregon-Ohio State game.
okay. What's your definition? You believe Oregon would win that game? Is that your definition of the upset?
Yeah, I think Oregon's gonna win that game.
Okay. All right.
And I think Kansas is going to be a big dark horse this year. I think they're not going to make the Big 12 championship. I mean, that's obvious to me, but I think they're going to beat teams like Texas and Baylor, and even K-State. But I think, they're still not going to make the Big 12 championship game. But I do believe Oklahoma is going to win the Big 12 championship with Spencer Rattler playing at QB this year. I think Spencer Rattler might be better than Jalen Hurts.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, if Oklahoma,
just like he threw over like 10,000 yards in high school,
Well, he did. He was a big recruit, and the good thing for Oklahoma is, if he turns out to be better than Jalen Hurts, they're going to have him for a few years, unlike Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray and guys like that.
Yeah, he's going to be. He could be the greatest of all of them.
Well, I can tell you what. Statistically, he has a chance to do that if he sticks around for at least 3 years. And I'm sure Lincoln Riley's going to do everything in his power to keep him there because I know they're tired of cycling through quarterbacks.
And I think Texas. I don't really know what to say about them. I think they will. I think the Big 12 is going to have a bit of a downfall this year. So I think it's going to be OU versus Texas this year. But I think OU will go 11-1. And I think they're going to lose Oklahoma State probably.
Okay.
Like, I'll be honest about that. But I think Texas is going to go 8-4. I know they still have Sam Ellinger, all that stuff, but they lost Colin Johnson, and that's like the best thing that the team's had in a long time for like a shooter. Like, he was almost everything in that offense.
Well, he was. Colin Johnson was fantastic, and you have Devin Duvernay as well, who they'll lose, Tom Herman, I think, missed a great opportunity last year to take advantage of that talent that he had on his team and maybe get back to the Big 12 championship. They had their chance to beat LSU at home, and they blew it. Had a chance to beat Oklahoma, relatively close game, and they blew it. They win 2 of those games. Texas is probably right back in, playoff discussion and Big 12 title discussion, and they just weren't able to get the job done. And with the talent that Texas brings in consistently, I do feel that they kind of underperform a little bit.
Yeah, I think the Big 12 is, they don't impress the playoffs that much. And, I think, it doesn't make the Big 12 look good at all. Who knows? There might not even be a Big 12 team in the playoffs this year.
Well, that's one thing we were kind of discussing earlier with Justin is, the fact that, he was hypothetically saying if Oklahoma did not make it, or maybe Oklahoma takes a step back, who's in your Big 12 championship? And, there's a possibility that I think if you get a Big 12, I think if you get a Big 12 team in there, a Big 12 champion that has 2 losses, even though they're conference champion, they are probably not getting into the playoff.
Yeah. Like, we might even see a Pac-12 championship.
Well, I think the Pac-12's only chance of getting into the playoff right now would be Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon. No one else. Not even USC or none of those teams. Not
yet. USC, I mean, could be a little sleeper if they ran the table after an opening loss to Alabama. To finish 11-1 or something like that. Absolutely, USC is in there, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Right, and I think Michigan's going to be kind of a bad team this year. I think they're about 7-5. They did lose Shea Patterson, right?
They did, yes.
Yeah, they're going to be a terrible team this year. Terrible. They're going to lose Penn State, Ohio State. I don't know what their non-conference schedule is, but
well, Michigan does open the season at Washington.
Yeah, I can see a loss in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan just doesn't really have an offense to show.
That's going to be
nothing to show for their offense.
That's going to be the kicker. Their defense will be the strength again. If they can get the offense gelling early, that you could be in store for a very good season from Harbaugh and the Wolverines. But the defense is going to have to carry them early on until they can get their feet wet.
Yep. Well, yeah, for sure. I think before playoff teams this year, you're going to see Clemson in there. I think Clemson, they play in a terrible conference. Well, I think North Carolina, they could have a chance.
Well, yeah, I mean, North Carolina's only chance is kind of running their table and defeating Clemson in the ACC title as well.
Yeah, I see an ACC title game there, but, with Trevor Lawrence still staying, 12-0 for Clemson, most likely. And I still, even if Oregon beats Ohio State, I still believe Ohio State's making the playoffs. And I think that would probably be your number 2 team in there this year.
Okay.
And I believe your number 3 team, you're going to see Florida in there. Florida, the biggest dark horse team this year. I believe in them. Kyle Trask, he might not have been too impressive last year, but I see something in that kid.
Well, he's extremely talented. I thought he played very well considering the circumstances in 2019, and I think under Dan Mullen, who knows how to coach his quarterbacks, I think he'll take a bigger step forward this year. So just to recap here, Chance, before we let you go, your top 4 playoff teams, or your playoff teams going into 2020, you saying Clemson, you believe Ohio State, Florida, and if I recall earlier, you mentioned you think Oklahoma goes 11-1 and gets into the playoff as well.
Yep, they're going to sneak in there. And so I do see Clemson versus Oklahoma this year. And I think, it's going to be a big matchup. I could see Oklahoma running the table on Clemson. And I think you could possibly even see Oklahoma upsetting Clemson because Clemson lost T. Higgins.
Well, they did, but they still returned Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne at running back. So,
but if Spencer Rattler plays really good this year, I think they have a chance at winning that game.
I think Clemson gives them a better chance for Oklahoma to put up a fight. Oklahoma hasn't really put up a fight in their previous 2 playoff appearances, so hopefully it would give them a chance to kind of contend a little bit better in that one.
I could probably see Clemson versus Ohio State in that championship game. And I think Justin Fields, he's more talented than Trevor Lawrence, He's also more of a mobile quarterback than what Trevor Lawrence is. Trevor Lawrence is just a pocket passer, but Justin Fields, he's more of a dual threat type quarterback. And, he's kind of like Kyler Murray, but, he's not as good as Kyler Murray, but, he's kind of just like him a little bit.
Well, he does. He does have that talent. He does have that dual threat ability. and that's something that will serve Ohio State extremely well, especially with a few questions at running back, and then after losing a few key receivers. Not too many, though. They're still going to have one of the better cores in the country. But Chance, we're going to let you go, man, so we can get to some more callers and comments in the chat. But hey, thanks so much for calling in, and I love the topics. I love the fact that you think 2020 might be crazier than 2007.
Could be. All right. Well, thanks for the call.
Hey, absolutely, man. Thanks for calling in. Take it easy.
Have a good day.
You too. And we're getting another call here from Newton, Iowa. Believe I know who it is, and I promise we'll be getting right back to this chat. All right. You were on the Gridiron Expert. Who do we have?
Oh, we got Mitch.
That's exactly who I thought it was. How's it going, Mitch?
I'm doing good. You?
I'm doing great, man. You got that driver's ed tonight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, fun stuff. I remember those days, man. It's absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
So what we got today? We got some more Iowa State talk, or are we switching up a little bit?
I'm gonna really talk more about like other conferences, like the Big Ten. I want to talk about the Big Ten today.
Okay. All right. What you got? Just Big Ten as a whole, or is there a specific area?
I'm gonna do like my Big Ten West standings for this year. Like at number 1, I have Minnesota. I have them going like 10-2.
Okay.
Something like that. Lost to Wisconsin, and do they play Ohio State?
I believe Minnesota avoids Ohio State.
Yeah. And I think they play at Michigan, or Michigan goes there. Yeah, but I think Minnesota will go 10-2. And Wisconsin, I think they have a very tough schedule. I think they might have it down here.
Okay. All right.
And like Jack Cohn really isn't. Well, he's decent, I guess, and their fans want Graham Mertz, but I don't think Graham Mertz will really be even better there.
No, I thought Jack Cohn, all things considered, played pretty well last year for Wisconsin. Of course, he had a great guy in the backfield, Jonathan Taylor, to kind of take that load off for him. But, we got to keep in mind, Hornibrook was almost the quarterback last year had he not transferred to Florida State. So I think, all things considered, he played well. But I know Mertz being highly touted out of high school, I know that's who people want under center. But I think Cohn's got that job for now until proven otherwise.
Yeah, and also Cohn didn't have much receivers to throw to other than Cephas, I think.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, Cephas, yeah. And number 3, I have Iowa. I have them going like 7-5.
Okay. Which that would be kind of I think a letdown for Hawkeye fans, all things considered.
Yeah, their schedule is way more difficult this year than it was last year.
It is. It is a little bit more difficult.
And you also have to replace a veteran quarterback, so that's always going to be tough.
Yeah, well, yeah, when you lose Stanley, you got a new guy to run there, and now they've got I think you're looking at a similar situation over at Michigan, where I think Iowa's defense, even though they lose a guy like Epinesa and guys like that, the defense is going to have to carry them until the offense picks it up a little bit.
Yeah. And at 4, I have Illinois.
Okay. All right.
This may be a surprise to all of you, but I think they're going to beat Ohio State.
Illinois is going to beat Ohio State.
Yeah, they're going to beat Ohio State. It's at Illinois, and Illinois is going to be a very talented team. On defense, they're pretty good, and they also add a couple grad transfers too.
Well, they do, and that's something that Lovie Smith. I'm glad they've kept him around, because I think they were wanting to fire him, but last year was the year that he finally got some impact transfers. The team was finally building up, and we saw that. They finally got him back to a bowl game, and they defeated Wisconsin, which was at Illinois. So Ohio State coming to Champaign, he's picking a big-time upset, but don't hate on him, because we know Ohio State has struggled against Big Ten West opponents in the past.
Yeah. And at 5, I have Northwestern. I think they're gonna have a bounce back year, and you never wanna, like Pat Fitzgerald. You never wanna underestimate him.
Oh, no. I mean, look, the biggest thing for Northwestern right now is they've got to find stability at quarterback. They thought the Hunter Johnson experiment was going to work last year. They were hyping him up. They just won the West, and I know Johnson battled injuries and stuff, but the entire offense, entire season period was a major letdown.
And they got an Indiana transfer, Peyton Ramsey, who's not a bad quarterback. He's pretty solid.
He's not. I'm interested to see how that quarterback battle plays out. If I'm Fitzgerald, I'm giving the reins to Ramsey, personally, because he has plenty of playing experience, is a solid quarterback, and knows how to play in the Big Ten. But I think that's going to be a battle that they'll decide probably closer to time.
Yeah, and that defense is going to be pretty good, too. I mean, that defense held a lot of teams to, like, low points for considering how terrible their offense was and how much they're on the field on defense.
They did, and that's once again that's one of Pat Fitzgerald's strengths. I believe he was a defensive player back in the day, and so it's no surprise as a head coach, defense is one of his strong suits and one of the strong areas of all of his teams. So I do believe Northwestern bounced back a little bit. They went 3-9 last year. Don't see that happening again. Probably still relatively low in the standings, but you can be low in the standings and go bowling.
Yeah, and come here at last. I have Nebraska. I mean, I hyped up Nebraska last year too, and if they get good quarterback playing and offense that's rolling, and I don't know if their defense was good last year. I hardly watched Nebraska football except when they played Ohio State and Iowa.
Yeah, well, the defense was pretty subpar. They were abysmal against Ohio State, allowed tons of points to Illinois. Were pretty bad against Colorado, losing that game in Boulder. So defense has to take that whole team period, Mitch, has to take a major step forward. Lots to work with there.
Yeah, and Scott Frost, he's having trouble coaching the guys up there. Like, if it's a different culture or what? Like, different culture than him. But yeah, he's trying to bring in his culture there, and it seems like it hasn't worked out yet.
Yeah, well, it has, and I think your word is very correct. The culture. Scott Frost is a good coach. What he did at UCF wasn't a fluke. It wasn't luck. It wasn't because he had someone else's players. But there's a difference of coaching at a smaller school and then coaching at a school like Nebraska that expects to contend every year, that has a lot of talent every year, and has so much history there. And I think you also have that added pressure as well with him being a quarterback there back during his prime. I think when you combine all those together, I think it makes things a little more difficult. And if you read up on Scott Frost, guys, he has a very different coaching style compared to the guys like Dabo Swinney and Nick Saban, even Ryan Day within the Big Ten. And it's a coaching style that he believes works, and whatever works for him, hopefully will work for his teams. But right now, he might need to change up his style a little bit because it's not panning out in the past few years.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to be hard for the Nebraska administration to fire Scott Frost. That's going to be a really, really tough decision.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You don't want to get rid of one of your own. That's a risk you take, though. It's great. It's great to hire somebody, bring them in because you believe they know what it takes to win at that school because they've played there or they went there. Their alma mater, you want to get someone that understands that culture, that word again. But at the same time, it makes firing them or letting them go that much harder. And that's something Nebraska has to be prepared for, if not this year, maybe the next, if he doesn't start turning things around.
Yeah, and I think if Scott Frost does get fired, I think P.J. Fleck will go either to Nebraska or USC.
That would be pretty big, Mitch. I tell you what, I like that move. Only big thing with P.J. Fleck is he has stayed in that upper region of the United States for a long time. It was Western Michigan. He moved over to Minnesota. I think the Nebraska move, if he's trying to stay within that region, makes more sense than USC. But who knows? USC certainly has, I think, a bigger history and better resources than that of a Nebraska.
Yeah, and the thing about PJ Fleck is he can really, really recruit, and all of his players love him. He's really had not really any team drama around his team, like other schools like Mississippi State or schools like that.
Yes, yeah, you're exactly right. And I think he's been a fantastic coach. And one thing's for sure, Mitch, is don't disregard PJ Fleck's name for everybody else listening out there, because USC more than likely is going to have to fire Clay Helton. Unless he has a great year, they're going to have to get rid of him. And that means USC is going to have to land a big-name hire, more than likely, that gets the fan base excited. And I think PJ Fleck, with the way he's been everywhere he's been, Western Michigan, now Minnesota, I think that's a guy that, with his type of system and mentality, is one that could really get USC back to kind of a elite status.
Yeah.
So
thanks for taking my call.
Hey, absolutely, man. And, next week, call back and we can talk some Big Ten East while we're at it.
All right.
All right, take care, Mitch. All right, so some great discussion from our very own Cyclone Mitch. Big Ten West football here, breaking down his standings for you. Nebraska finishing last in that division, Minnesota finishing first in that division. PJ Fleck and the Golden Gophers would then make the Big Ten championship, more than likely facing off against Ohio State. Who knows what could happen after that. It's going to be a tight race up at the top, though, between the Golden Gophers and the Badgers, I believe, of Wisconsin for who wins that Western Division. So, great discussion there, as always, with Mitch. Going to try to get to the chat here as we are about to wrap up this live stream, unfortunately. Once again, don't really like keeping these short and don't like jumping on them early. I saw Hunter Shin. Super good to have you here and super good to see you early today because, as I said, we had a prior commitment that kind of came up, kind of forgot about it. And so 8 o'clock wasn't going to work, but we will be back at 8 o'clock for next Wednesday. Keto, so good to see you. Great work on your channel, guys. Keto already jumping into some of his college football predictions for this upcoming season. And, of course, I really appreciate your support and hearing from you. So I'm going to kind of whip through the rest of this chat here so I can make sure I hit on a couple last topics, make sure everybody gets the appropriate shout-out they deserve. George Stice, good to see you, one of our moderators. Super happy to have you here and kind of talk a little bit about some Clemson here. And I see down below we're talking about Hunter Johnson at Northwestern. And I agree. I hope he has a good bounce-back year. But, George, I unfortunately hate to say it, I think Hunter Johnson, if he wants to have a decent playing career, if he wants to start making a name for himself, might have to transfer again. Okay, he got hurt and wasn't playing well at Northwestern last year after transferring from Clemson. Peyton Ramsey comes in from Indiana to Northwestern. If he gets the nod, he's going to start all year unless, of course, he goes down with an injury or starts playing poorly. And now Hunter Johnson's wasted so many years of his college career bouncing around from Clemson and Northwestern, trying to find a place where he fits in and still can't play. Kind of reminds me a little bit of a Tate Martell situation. Not as similar because Tate Martell was a wuss and didn't want to work for anything. Hunter Johnson is not that guy, but a guy that was highly touted coming out of high school and didn't really do much in college. I hope he gets his chance somewhere. Maybe it's Northwestern, but he's going to have to figure that out very, very quickly. And look at that, Radley, bro, thank you so much for the super chat donation. Really, really appreciate that. Just seeing that coming in right now. And I really appreciate that. That means a lot. Guys, always the super chat is on, and that means so much to us. It helps us out so much, once again, more than you know, because we've got a couple things in store for prediction season that we're really looking forward to showing off. And donations like this, sales from our expert picks, stuff like that, help build this channel and help us continue to get bigger and better every single day. So, Radley, I really, really appreciate that. Who is my pick for the Big 12 champion? To answer your question, I think right now I have to continue to say Oklahoma. Now, of course, I'll be making those official predictions in a few months. But kind of as we said with Georgia, Florida, I know it's almost like a cop-out answer, but until proven otherwise, you go with what's working. You go with who's been champion. With Alabama, until proven otherwise, they win the West. Last year, they were proven otherwise. LSU beat them. Georgia, Florida, and for Oklahoma, until proven otherwise, I think Oklahoma once again wins the Big 12. that, of course, will all depend on how well Spencer Rattler plays and how well Oklahoma's defense continues to play under Alex Grinch. So major questions there, but until proven otherwise, I like Oklahoma. The schedule lines up well for Oklahoma, and I do not expect a poor performance from Spencer Rattler. Fantastic quarterback coming out of high school, has learned under Lincoln Riley. He's kind of watched some great quarterbacks at Oklahoma in the past, last year being Jalen Hurts. I think he's going to do just fine, especially since, once again, Lincoln Riley is a quarterback guru, one of the best offensive minds in all of college football. So that's who I like right now to win the Big 12. And once again, Radley, thank you so much for that donation. It truly, truly does mean a lot. Every single bit helps. And Scott, I saw another thing up there earlier. Scott Van Kale, once again, promoting the brand, promoting the channel. Not only hit that like button, but hit that bell. Hit those notifications. You'll get notifications every time we post a video, every time we go live. And once again, please continue to subscribe. We're almost to 3,800 subscribers. And what a joy it would be to hit 4,000 subs before we start predictions here in just a few weeks. Official date is coming out for that in a few weeks, and you do not want to miss it. We got a whole big video planned out for it. It's a grand reveal. And our last question here from Adam Berry, and how is Nebraska going to do this year? We just talked about a little bit with Cyclone Mitch, Adam, that he thinks that they fall down to the bottom of the Big Ten West standings. And Nebraska probably does not make a bowl game, and they finish last in the West. And that would be very bad, meaning no bowl game for the third straight year, I believe, under Scott Frost, and he might be getting the boot. I don't know if they finish last in the West, Adam, but I do think they have a lot they've got to figure out. The defense was abysmal last year. The quarterback play was abysmal last year. I think Nebraska gets more competitive this year. I think they definitely show some competitiveness, and maybe with another year under their belt, they finally win those close games that they were unable to win in 2019. But I think right now, Adam, best case scenario is a 6-6, 7-5 season, and that might be pushing it. So, might be pushing it. Official predictions haven't come out yet, Adam. I might surprise you here in a few weeks when we break down Nebraska. But I hope it's not, because I love Scott Frost. I love the culture over at Nebraska. Mitch and I were using that word a lot. Culture, something that Nebraska is very rich in and something that Scott Frost is trying to build there. He's just been unsuccessful these past few years. So I hope it starts to change for him in 2020. So, guys, we're going to wrap things up here once again. Ran a little bit over. Will Burrow, there's your shout-out. I'm looking at my iPad here with the comments. There's your shout-out. I want to apologize if we were unable to get to your questions and comments within the chat here. Of course, we had a couple great callers that lasted a little while, some great discussion there, and of course, this live stream lasting a little shorter than usual, about half of what we usually go, which is close to 2 hours. So I do want to apologize for that. Once again, started a little early today. Next week, we'll be back at our normal 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time here on the live streams. But to Will Burrow, George Stice, Scott Van Kale, Adam Berry, DM, Hunter Shin, John Hopkins, everybody on here on the live stream. Want to thank you guys so much. Ethan the Buckeye as well. Thank you all for joining us on such short notice at this special early edition of the Gridiron Expert live stream. You guys continue to stay safe out there as it is starting to pour right outside my house right now. It's going to make for a great drive to dinner. But thank you all so much for joining us. Stay safe. Thank you for all the support. And stay tuned tomorrow as we start our top 10 schedule previews going in to the 2020 season. So once again, thank you all so much. Stay safe. Have a great rest of your night.